TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump hold a phone conversation during the course of which the latter reiterated Washington's unequivocal support for Jerusalem in its war on Hamas. The de-facto regime in Damascus demands Israel remove its military forces from Syrian soil. The Iranian-proxy Ansar-Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, declares victory over the United States and Israel. Israel warmly welcomed freed Israeli-American hostage Idan Alexander after 584 days in Hamas captivity. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a televised statement, reasserted that the release of Idan Alexander was made possible through the military pressure applied by the IDF and diplomatic pressure that was applied by US President Donald Trump.
This is a very emotional moment. Idan Alexander has returned home. We embrace him and we embrace his family. This was achieved thanks to our military pressure and the diplomatic pressure applied by President Trump. This is a winning combination. I spoke with President Trump today. He told me I am committed to Israel. I am committed to continuing to work with you in close cooperation in order to achieve all of our war objectives, releasing all of the hostages, and defeating Hamas. This goes together. They are combined with each other.
Meanwhile, Israeli government spokesperson David Mencer highlighted that, in effect, Israel was not a party to the deal that secured the release of Idan Alexander from Hamas captivity. However, the Witkoff framework, which includes the release of all 58 hostages, along with the disarmament of Hamas's military and governing capabilities, has once again been put on the table.
For clarity, Israel has not agreed to any ceasefire nor the release of terrorists. We have committed only to a temporary humanitarian corridor to facilitate Idan's safe return. Hamas have made this release as a gesture to our American allies. Now, I can share with you that we are in the midst of critical days. A serious, credible proposal is now on the table, a deal that would bring all of our hostages home. Israel has accepted the Witkoff framework. Hamas continues to reject it.
Meanwhile, ahead of US President Donald Trump's departure to the Middle East last night, which is scheduled to include the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, President Trump asserted that he hopes to secure the release of additional hostages.
We hope that we're going to have other hostages released too, as you know. So when I met with the hostages 3 weeks ago that were there for quite a while, you remember the 10 people that came in, mostly young people, 1 or 2 were a little bit older. They were explaining the trials and tribulations. I mean, they went through hell.
President Trump further addressed an anticipated meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that is expected to take place on Thursday under Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's auspices.
Don't underestimate Thursday in Turkey. President Erdogan is going to be a great host, and we are doing some work with him having to do with Syria, too, by the way. We're going to have to make a decision on the sanctions, which we may very well relieve. We may take them off of Syria because we want to give them a fresh start. But President Erdogan's asked me about that. Many people have asked me about that because the way we have them sanctioned, it doesn't really give them much of a start. So we want to see if we can help them out. So we'll make that determination.
It is worth noting that a day prior to President Trump's remarks, U.S. State Department Tammy Bruce addressed Washington's ongoing scrutiny of the de-facto regime in Damascus, which, alongside atrocities committed against the Alawite and Druze minorities in recent weeks, has appointed Ahmed El-Hayes, known by his jihadi name Abu Hatim Shakra, as commander of Syria's northeastern division. A heavily sanctioned jihadist, the United States sanctioned al-Hayes for extrajudicial killings and egregious human rights violations.
Here's what I can tell you is that the interim authorities' decision to appoint this individual, who has a long record of human rights abuses and undermining our defeat ISIS mission, to an official position is a serious mistake that the U.S. does not support.
While Damascus, under the de facto ruler Ahmed al-Shara, also known as Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, continues to appoint jihadists who were designated as terrorists into its leadership roles, the Trump administration decided to extend a waiver for Qatar nonetheless of up to $29 million per month to pay salaries to Syria's public sector.
Well, we have in place a waiver mechanism from quite some time ago for assistance that would contribute to Syria's stability in this process, all right? And that waiver dynamic is what has allowed Qatar to provide assistance for salaries of certain workers. So that they would not have needed a new approval, they would not have needed a new waiver. And again, any assistance that works within that framework has to be targeted to, again, helping to stabilize Syria.
Meanwhile, in Ankara, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan hosted his counterparts from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the Damascus regime, during the course of which the three top diplomats seized the opportunity to bash Israel over its forward deployment on Syrian soil, demanding an immediate withdrawal.
لا تزال حدودنا تتعرض لانتهاكات مستمرة جراء الاعتداءات الإسرائيلية.
Our borders are still facing continuing violations due to the Israeli aggression. These violations are not individual incidents, but systematic breaches of international law and direct provocations that threaten to ignite the whole region. The Israeli airstrikes on Syrian territory, which often target civilian infrastructure and cause the deaths of innocent people, are not acts of self-defense but calculated escalations aimed at destabilizing Syria and dragging the region into conflict again.
It is important to highlight that in contrast to the foreign minister of the Damascus regime, Israel's offensive activities were launched after jihadist forces launched an attack against the Druze minority south of the Syrian capital Damascus. Nevertheless, in spite of this fact, Jordan's foreign minister, whose kingdom seemingly fears the threat of the Turkish-backed jihadists pushing southward even into Jordan, has evidently decided to join the Islamists in condemning the state of Israel.
Israel has no right to push towards tension and division in Syria. Israeli interventions in Syria will not bring security to Israel and will only bring ruin and destruction to Syria. Regarding the issue of southern Syria, it is our direct border and part of our strategic security for us in the Jordanian kingdom. We want peace and stability for southern Syria and the entire Syria, with no risk of terrorism or Israeli interference.
Returning to Washington, where President Trump, before leaving the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, addressed the nuclear talks which his team is holding with the Islamic Republic of Iran.
We'll see what we're going to do with respect to Iran. I think you have very good things happening there, too, by the way. I think they can't have a nuclear weapon, but I think that they are talking intelligently. We're in the midst of talking to them, and they're right now acting very intelligent. We want Iran to be wealthy and wonderful and happy and great, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. So I think they understand that I mean business, and I think they're being very reasonable thus far.
It is interesting to know that while President Trump insisted that the talks were going well, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, during a cabinet meeting in Tehran, reiterated that the Islamic Republic would not accept the Trump administration's red line, which relates to enrichment.
In fact, the Islamic Republic of Iran is not seeking nuclear weapons. They said they wanted to be sure that we did not want to acquire nuclear weapons and we were ready with all our might, but for them to state and announce that we would abandon the issue of peacefulness in nuclear research, and then for them to want to negotiate with us, is something that is absolutely unacceptable.
President Pezeshkian went on to claim that his country, which provokes belligerence via its proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Gaza, and Yemen, among others, is not the one causing unrest in the region. Rather, nearly a day after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei once again called for Israel's imminent demise, President Pezeshkian blamed Israel for regional instability.
In no way is the Islamic Republic seeking unrest in the region. It is Israel that is creating unrest in the region. The world should know that we are a country that is seeking peace and security in the region.
Meanwhile, in Yemen, the Iranian-proxy Ansar-Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe, held a rally in which it declared victory over the United States and Israel.
Allah is great. Death to America, death to Israel, curse the Jews, victory for Islam. We were surprised, along with the rest of the world, when we heard that the U.S. reached out to our brothers in Oman to stop attacks on us, with the condition that we stop targeting them and targeting their aircraft carriers. This is indicative of their failure and their defeat, with thanks to God. Today, the great Yemeni people came out joyful at this great victory, this victory which every Yemeni has earned, every honorable Yemeni. Today, with thanks to Allah, we have subdued the U.S. and subdued Israel.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to urge you to take a moment to pray for the hostages who've endured 585 days in Hamas captivity. Pray also for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. And separately, if you've been blessed by TV7's programs, which are exclusively funded by our viewers, please consider supporting our productions with a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.